Taxi Association SANTACO will stop operations on Monday to protest against a relief package announced by Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula on Friday. A 1.135 billion rand relief fund has been allocated to the taxi industry during the COVID-19 pandemic by government. SANTACO says the funding is insufficient as it must be shared between taxi operators, metered taxis, as well as e-hailers. Melo Magolego, political analyst, joins us on the line to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the taxi industry, as well as the impact of the strike for commuters scheduled for Monday in the Gauteng region. Melo, thank you so much for your time. Welcome back. Now, the taxi industry has already received the largest relief package for any economic subsectors provided by government. Can they actually receive more?
Good morning to your viewers. I think, obviously, if you want to go down the route of comparing whether they've received enough or whether they can receive more, the issue then comes in terms of the contribution in terms of transport infrastructure that the taxi industry performs, right? So you'll see in terms of about daily passenger volumes, speaking something on the order about 15 million. If you calculate that, I think, down to rough figure in terms of the relief that they should be getting, you'll see that the 1.1 billion that they're getting is actually substantially less than their proportional contribution to a country. This now taking into cognizance the contributions that government pays in terms of subsidizing metro rail contributions that government pays in subsidizing the bus services and even the Gautrain. So for me, that type of thing obviously means that the taxi industry should be receiving more. So now the problem that comes in now is that government within the current economic budgeting paradigm, they've sort of run out of funds. They do not have enough money to be able to pay the taxi industry whatever relief that they want, right? And then the relief that the taxi industry seeks actually is on two fronts, right? On the one front, actually, it's because of a decrease in terms of the general number of passenger volumes because of the lockdown, because people aren't going to work as much, right? So there's a general decrease in frequency of taxi trips, therefore a general decrease in revenues that the taxi drivers are receiving, right? The other impact also that's coming in is the impact of that 70% limit in terms of passenger volumes that taxi drivers can carry, right? So I think for me, those two things, obviously the 70%, that's a negotiated arrangement between government and the taxi drivers. And I think on that level, there should be a level of cognizance and compensation for that because the taxi industry is cooperating. But in terms of the volume decrease in terms of passengers being under lockdown, I think that should fall under a broader macroeconomic approach in terms of how government is going to help re-stimulate the entire economy, because it's not just the taxi industry that's been impacted by decreasing volumes because of a generalized decrease in passenger frequencies.
Melo, in your opinion, considering that the economy is already strained, how worse can it get, considering that tomorrow there will be a shutdown? A lot of people are trying to dial back in and head back to work, but now this shutdown could cripple the economy as of tomorrow.
Absolutely. If you go back to that number of 15 million passenger volumes, obviously now you're talking about 15 million. Obviously, some people that take more than one taxi trip, right? But then even if you divide it, it comes about to a couple of million people that are depending on the taxi system to get to work, right? Worse off the fact that metro rail has been shut down and it's not operating, and other bulk services are also not operating, right? So it impacts people's capacity to be able to go back to work, right? And a lot of the people that you're finding are using the taxis, precisely the people that cannot work from home, precisely because the work is sort of like a manual work that requires them to be at the office. Secondly, it's a lot of the people that do not have broadband internet access to be able to readily access work services that they need to actually be at the office, right? So what this does then is that it impacts on people's capacity to be able to hold their jobs and their livelihood in terms of it risks their ability now to be put on the retrenchment line, right? So I think that for me is something that's a far bigger impact than just the one-day stoppage in terms of decrease in economic activity. It's a long-term impact when now companies now are trying to decide now who to retrench now. They're looking, but they know this one is always having transport problems. Maybe if we just cut this one and all of these other ones remain, then the company will be a little bit more productive. So I think in terms of that, obviously that's a scary prospect. I think the other thing for me that's a big impact in this taxi strike is this notion of this fare increase that the Taxi Association has brought up, right? So this fare increase, if you look at it, right, it sort of like says it's a percentage increase, therefore we'll increase it maybe by 10, 20% or 50% or whatever the percentage is, right? It doesn't doesn't sound like a lot of money, right? But if you're an individual, right, you budget a certain amount of money. Let's say your taxi fare, say per month you're spending 500 rand for transport, right? Then the taxi drivers, they say, no, we're going to increase it now by 50%. Now you're spending something like 750. But you look at in terms of your expenditure and everything, like you can only afford to pay maybe 600 because then all of your other expenses have sort of taken up your income now, right? So what happens now, that shortfall now, even though that's 50%, that shortfall means that you're not going to be able to get transport on certain days, right? Because you can't go to a taxi driver and say, no, on Tuesday I'm only going to pay you 10% less because that's my 10% shortfall in terms of my income. The taxi driver wants his money in full and each and every day. So it impacts on your ability to be able to go to work firstly, right? The other thing that it also hits, and that I think this is very important, is in terms of your discretionary income, in terms of you being able to spend and buy things such as consumables, such as groceries and so on, right? This impacts on your ability to be able to be healthy, especially in this health crisis. This impacts on the demand in the retail sector, right, which is also experiencing, obviously, decreased volumes because of the lockdown. So for me, I think, in general, to summarize, the one solution that I think government should actually put forward, there should be some sort of package where the taxi industry is going to get a little bit of relief, right? And that relief, for me, I think, comes on two fronts. So the first one, the 1.1 billion package that government has proposed, I think that must remain. Obviously, that's going to be across the board, right? The other thing that I think they have not factored in is all of these guys that have bank loans that must pay for taxis and service the interest payments and the capital payments on those loans, right? I think what government should do there is that they should go to that Treasury loan guarantee scheme and create some sort of dedicated fund for the taxi industry in that loan guarantee scheme, and then use that to sort of give the taxi industry something like a 6-month payment holiday. And that 6-month payment holiday, obviously, then government can sort of like pick up the interest payment, but then the capital payment on that loan can get deferred for 6 months. I think this will provide a bit of relief for the taxi industry, because a lot of them now, they still have to be paying the banks for whatever car installments that they have, but they're not receiving any income, and I think that's impacting on them. So if you give them that sort of relief, I think then it's sort of like a bargaining chip that you can use, right? But then obviously government mustn't back down on this 1.1 billion, because it creates a problem of credibility for them, right? And I think lastly, just to add, I think the one other thing that obviously now in this scheme, if government proposes this loan guarantee scheme where they're going to give the taxi industry a payment holiday, is that the taxi industry wins now, because the political battle for them, they win in the sense that they've got a demand where they wanted relief, and then now they can go back in their corner and say, okay, guys, we're going to call off the strike, right? Government on the other end also, they get some sort of relief, right? So, and I think the political win that government can do is that in exchange for providing this loan guarantee scheme, the government must say that then all taxi services will not increase fares. And I think from their end, then that's a political win on their side, where there's no fare increases, and on the other end, the taxi industry, they get a 6-month payment holiday on their bank loans, in addition to this 1.1 billion that has been put up.
You literally stole the questions out of my mouth, Melo. I really wanted to find out what is a good idea for government to raise that kind of money to be able to continue giving taxi relief support for the taxi industry. And you bring about a good idea, but do you think taxpayers out there are willing to have their money going to an unregulated industry?
So for me, I think obviously the loan guarantee scheme, as it's been structured, it's an initiative between the commercial banks and the Reserve Bank, right? So I think on that front, obviously, that takes care. It sort of makes it fiscally neutral, if you want to use that economic language, right? And in addition, this loan guarantee scheme is not something that's just been dedicated or created for taxi drivers. It's a scheme that exists out there for all businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19, right? So in essence, what you're saying here is that you're just recognizing that the taxi industry is another business that's also impacted by COVID-19. It's not like you're giving them a special treatment, whether be they regulated or unregulated. I think the issue of broader taxi industry regulation, I think that one is a very difficult issue, and I don't know whether government wants to negotiate such a thing when they're staring down the barrel of a gun of a shutdown as the taxi industry is proposing. Right? So I think let them try and put out this fire, and then they can go back to the table and sit down and talk about long-term structural reforms and regulatory issues that they want to address in the taxi industry.
Quickly, Melo, before I let you go, 5,000 Rand obviously is unjustifiable for one taxi. And then, of course, the 1.1 million Rand won't cover all these taxis. But tomorrow there's still a shutdown. It looks like it's a situation of damned if you do or damned if you don't. What should the game plan be for tomorrow then?
Well, I think obviously, the government, I think they can try and call these guys and talk to them today and call off the shutdown, right? And as I say, that if government can come to some sort of in principle agreement with these guys in terms of the loan guarantee scheme, and I think these guys will feel that they have a political win. The difficulty here is that these guys are not going to cancel the shutdown if they don't feel that there's a political concession that they've won. They can go back to their members and say, guys, look, this is what we won by threatening to do a shutdown, right? So you need to give them something. I think that can be done today. It's not something that can take 10 days to negotiate. They can negotiate it today. But if government does not feel that they want to negotiate at that speed, then obviously tomorrow we're facing a shutdown, and then that's that, right? Then people won't be able to go to work, especially given that there's no metro rail and so on. That's going to be an issue.
All right, Melo Magolego, thank you so much for your time. A political analyst outlining the impact of COVID-19 on the taxi industry and the impact of the pending strike set for Monday. SANTACO is protesting against the relief package of 1.135 billion Rand announced by the Transport Ministry.